Howdy folks, welcome back to the channel. The old IDI is looking a little different than last time you saw it. Got the hood set up there, getting that thing painted. Just laid down my first coat of primer and I'm waiting for that to dry. And I figured, well, I haven't done a video yet this week, but I found this guy at the dump. Believe it or not, sitting in a box beside the dumpster. Now I actually know what this thing is. You guys might know what it is. This here is a vintage camp stove. This is a Svea 123R camp stove. And I figured today, well, let's clean this thing up and we'll revive it. Alrighty, now that we're in here on the workbench, we'll give this thing a good little once over. Of course, as you might be able to tell, this stove is all brass. If I can spin this, which is going to require both hands, you can see this top portion pops right off, and you got to feed the key through it. Just like so. So this top portion is kind of a heat shield, and it's also supposed to have three little legs. You can see I'm already missing one. And these guys can fold out, and you can set a pot right on here to boil water or whatever you got to do. Getting in here, you can see this thing has a custom-made flame spreader that somebody designed and, you know, custom built. This thing doesn't surprise me at all because I actually have another one of these Svea 123 camp stoves, and when I got it, it was missing the flame spreader, so apparently these are just commonly lost. You can see this thing has plenty of patina on it, and we'll get to cleaning this thing up here in a moment, but you can see if we get around there, it says made in Sweden around there, and over here it says Svea 123. You guys will see that a lot better. And we know this one is a R, a 123R, because the fuel nozzle here, or the fuel control, comes out of the body level. If this was a Svea 123, it would come down at an angle. And the special thing about the Svea 123R is that it is a self-cleaning stove. That means that the little jet down here, we'll get this guy out of the way. That's your jet. Your fuel shoots out here. And if you open this fuel nozzle all the way, if the camera will focus at all for you guys, you might be able to see the little needle that pokes out of there. And that guy is what cleans this thing out. So the older variants of these stoves would have come with just a little handheld needle that you would stick in there to clean it out. But this one, you just have to open it up, it cleans itself out. So let me get some cleaning stuff together, and we'll give this thing a good shine. Alrighty, to start here, I've just got a nylon bristled brush here, and some all-purpose cleaner here, and we're just going to sort of work around the base of this little guy. We'll try and stay on the paper towel. And we'll try and clean up all the junk that's on here. You can see it's kind of cleaning up already. I'm going to keep working at this. Alrighty, well, here we are. Moved outside, obviously, on the tailgate of the old pickup. If we're going to try and get this thing to fire off, I obviously don't want it in the house where, you know, fires can get started. But you can see I got this thing all cleaned up. I didn't do a very intensive job. I really didn't want it super clean. These things being all brass, you can shine this thing so it just like glows in the dark. Here you can see now the camera will focus. And it says Svea 123 down here. It says made in Sweden over here. And then here it says benzylene, petrol, essence, and Benson. Those are all the fuel types you can use in these little guys. We've got our guard here. You can see I just took an old nail here and bent it over in the vise, and then I actually cut a little notch down here. And the way these were made from the factory is all the little pot stands had a little notch in them, and then that was crimped. So these guys don't come out. And of course, the old one came out. So we'll get some fuel for this thing. We'll fuel it up, and I'll show you guys how we light these. Alrighty, I got some fuel in this thing. Of course, I didn't fill it all the way to the brim because these work off of pressure in this fuel tank, and if you have it filled to the brim, there's no air to build pressure with. Now, how do you light these things is a very good question. Because, of course, if you know anything about the old Coleman camp stoves, they have a little hand pump on the side that you can use to put pressure into this tank. Well, these clearly do not have that. What you do is you put some fuel out of the camp stove in this little well here that you see, and then you light it on fire. One method that I've seen that works really well for lighting these is you take a straw. I'm using an old pen body that hopefully works. Well, it might not work very well. Well, it kind of works. And you just kind of fill this little well full of fuel. Of course, there's not a great way to do this without spilling fuel everywhere, and clearly that's why we're outside right now. And then, of course, you put the fuel cap back on because you're about to light this thing on fire. If I had an actual straw that wasn't notched on the end, you can see that's notched, and that's part of why I made such a mess. So we're going to move this thing over from that fuel spill so we don't light this tailgate on fire. And then you just kind of light this on fire. And you want to let that burn, and of course that fuel burning creates heat. That creates pressure in this tank, and well, it'll make this thing easy to light. Once you have that fuel burning, you can go ahead and put this cover on. Gotta feed the key through first. There we go. Hopefully there's a little bit of pressure in there now. You can see it spewing out fuel, and there it is. Now this thing's going to burn big, obviously, until it builds up a lot more pressure. Now hopefully soon it will start to actually, burn like a stove. There you can hear the little jet going. So eventually, when all the fuel is burnt off the main body of the stove, it'll burn like an actual stove. And then the cool thing about these is the heat that it creates pressurizes this fuel tank, and it self-feeds it now. There you can see it's burning like a stove. We can kind of adjust the flame here. That's one of the reasons that I really like these little camp stoves like this, is of just how insanely simple it is and how well it actually works. Let me go see if I can find a pot with some water, and well, we'll boil some water, I guess. Alrighty, well, I failed to find a camp pot, because of course it's not camping season and hasn't been camping season in Alaska for a long time. But yeah, this little guy burns really nicely, actually, especially given that it has that little homemade flame spreader there. So that's pretty neat. And well, I can feel the heat. It builds a lot of it. So pretty neat. I can't believe somebody would throw such a cool little thing out, but the only thing I can think is that this guy was sitting on somebody's old bookshelf or in their garage or something since the 1980s. As far as I can tell, and all the research that I've done, is Svea started making the 123 stove in the early 1950s, they changed their design to this 123R design in the 1960s or the 1970s, and I think they stopped making them in the early 1980s. So these are really a vintage piece, and of course, I mean, the engineering in this is very old. It's super simple. I mean, it's hard to beat these things. They just work really well. So yeah, anyhow, nice little revival, kind of a fun one. Quick little you know, Friday night adventure around here. I really enjoyed it, and well, it's kind of neat. It's always neat to bring something back to life that has been abandoned, forgotten, or thrown out, just like this thing was. So yeah, thanks for watching, and well, tune in next week for hopefully more of the regular nonsense and no more of this crazy camp stove stuff.